Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we're talking about a recent, very troubling trend with media producers and their public interactions with fans on social media. Kinda like what we went over last week, when we talked about how Disney Star Wars and its directors and actors have recently decided to turn on their fans online. Most famously, The Last Jedi director Rian Johnson came out calling fans sexist, racist man-babies for not liking his shitty movie and his shitty Mary Sue character Rose Tico. And well, in addition to more Star Wars people like John Boyega chiming in this week to blame the fans for their failure too, there's also been another company who's decided to say screw the fans too. EA, or Electronic Arts, a video game production company, they've been getting bad responses and negative feedback non-stop since they revealed the Battlefield 5 trailer, which showed it would be starring a female, lesbian, disabled, trans main character with a robot arm. Not kidding. And while we weren't totally surprised by this, SJW agendas have been taking over everywhere, plus Battlefield is made by DICE, a studio in Sweden, which of course has gone almost full libtard, but even so, it was still surprising to see the EA creative director come out and pull the same move the Star Wars people are doing. They're all blaming the fans for their failed projects, instead of taking personal responsibility for turning their projects into awful SJW garbage. Instead of doing that, both Battlefield and Star Wars have decided to attack their fan bases. And needless to say, I don't like it one goddamn bit. We're going to go over this whole story today, starting with an article from Polygon called "Creatives Are Finally Telling Man Babies to Stay Home." Polygon is of course siding with the companies who are shitting on us, the fans and loyal customers. Funny how news sites and reporters used to represent the people and care about our wants and needs, but now all these bullshit websites are fake news, wannabe journalists, and people who will shill for their corporate overlords every chance they can get. Sounds like Polygon's gone the same way. Oh well, let's check out their article anyway. Some very aggressive Battlefield fans are upset the game includes women, or has a woman on the cover. Some of them are convinced that women didn't exist during the past, so putting them in a game set in the past is wrong. It's all kind of muddled. The general situation is that some gamers are upset about women existing, which is a pretty common event in gaming, but this time the anger is aimed at Battlefield 5. Okay, hold up. Let me go ahead and stop you right there, Polygon. That's quite the lovely straw man you're building up there. It almost knocks itself down, in fact, but it's not based on reality at all, though. Fans aren't upset that the game includes women. We don't hate women. Fans are upset because we expected Battlefield 5 to be historically accurate, like all the other Battlefield games. Depicting war and battles as accurately and detailed as possible is what the Battlefield series has always been about. So when we saw a trailer with a small, handless woman on the front lines, it was a bit jarring and pretty damn confusing. There was also some guy with a ninja sword and all kinds of other weird stuff that really just threw people off. For more examples of why people didn't like the Battlefield 5 trailer, here's a clip from a popular video called "Why Gamers Already Hate Battlefield 5" by Meow Captain. Let's take a look.
So why are gamers so unhappy with this trailer? Part of this can be attributed to the fact that overall, the trailer left more people confused and angry than excited. Or as a Forbes article put it, quote, "I've watched this a few times and I have to say I have no clue what's going on." This isn't the only issue, however, as there's also a surprising lack of historical accuracy, with the game seeming far from an accurate portrayal of World War II.
So, like I said before, people were upset because the trailer was confusing and a bit of a mess. And also, more importantly, it wasn't historically accurate, as this commentator goes on to elaborate about.
One of the biggest critiques of the game is related to the presence of the female soldier. While yes, women did play an important role in both world wars, this was nearly entirely limited to taking over jobs in factories and supplying the war effort. While some were drafted into the military, this was very minimal and mostly as nurses, with the only combat-related possibility being anti-aircraft units. The only army to have used women as infantry was Russia, whereas here this is quite clearly a soldier in the British forces.
Okay, great. So now you can see more about why fans really didn't like the trailer. You heard it from me and you heard it from another actual Battlefield fan and gamer channel. But unfortunately, it looks like EA and Polygon are taking a cue from the Ocean's 8 playbook, and in turn from Ghostbusters 2016. You see, this is just like what I was talking about in my video about those movies last week. These companies are forcing women into their content for SJW reasons. They're making all-girl reboot movies and a female-led video game in genres that really don't want it, nor does it usually make sense to have women in these situations either. And when the fans inevitably get upset and don't buy these products, the companies then turn on them and call them sexist women haters. That's what those movies did, and that's what Battlefield 5 is doing now. And apparently, the jokers over at Polygon are going right along with it. So now that we established the real reasons people hated the Battlefield 5 trailer, now that we got that out of the way, let's turn back to the article and see the bullshit responses the company has had to their misfire. What's notable is the response of some members of the creative team behind the game. Battlefield 5 is a lot about the unseen, the untold, the unplayed. EA Chief Creative Officer Patrick Soderlund told Gamasutra, "The common perception is that there were no women in World War II. There were a ton of women who both fought in World War II and partook in the war. No, guy, no there wasn't. Like we went over before, women weren't on the front lines in World War II at all. The only country who even had female soldiers was Russia, and they weren't frontline ones. The rest of the women helping with the war were working in factories or being nurses. They weren't on the front lines with robot arms shooting guns and rolling around and shit. I'm sorry you guys want to rewrite history over there at EA and DICE, but we're too smart and level-headed to buy this crap. Figuratively and literally, because we're not going to buy this game either. But you know what? If you do want to put women in your game here, if you want to keep forcing them down our throats, down the throats of your mostly male audience, well, you should at least have the decency to say, hey, we know this isn't accurate, but we wanted to put those options in there anyway. Stop trying to gaslight everyone, EA. We're not going to buy your big outrageous lie here about the war. Sorry." He goes on to state that the development team pushed for women to be included in the game. Shocker. Dyson, Sweden, fucking things up again. That his daughter doesn't understand why people are upset, that both men and women want to play as women, and that's just the way gaming is these days. Before he gets to the real point, and we don't take any flack, Soderlund said. We stand up for the cause, because I think those people who don't understand it, well, you have two choices. Either accept it or don't buy the game. I'm fine with either or. It's just not okay. Wow. This EA guy really has the balls to say, accept it or don't buy the game. And, well, I hate to break it to you, guy, but we weren't going to buy this game anyway. And I think he knows this in a way. That's why EA is basically saying, you can't fire me, I quit. What a childish and stubborn response. Instead of listening to their fans and perhaps tweaking things a bit or something, EA is doubling down and saying, fuck the fans. And then when, unshockingly, when you tell your customers to not buy your game, well, people aren't going to buy your game, dumbass. But do you think EA will finally take the blame when they start losing money? Hell no. Then they will triple down and say toxic masculinity is to blame for their low sales. We've seen this whole situation play out time and time again, particularly with Star Wars going on last week. They too had dumbasses trying to push their pro-feminist SJW agendas in their movies, which is particularly funny because Disney bought Star Wars partly in an effort to get more male customers. If you think about it, most of Disney's properties are cartoons and princess stuff, mainly for kids and women. So Disney did make a smart move, buying a male-centered franchise to balance things out, like Star Wars. But guess what they did with Star Wars as soon as they bought it? They put the idiot feminist Kathleen Kennedy in charge, who instantly started making this brand for girls, which is pretty much what Battlefield 5 is trying to do now. They're just in the earlier pre-release phase, while Star Wars is already in the post-release damage control phase, where all the creatives freak out and start lashing out at fans, and they're blaming their problems on bullshit buzzwords like toxic masculinity. Next, the article turns to the Star Wars side of the story. This has been happening more and more lately. Some of the folks behind the pop culture we enjoy are done pretending the most toxic fans are worth keeping around. Done with this disingenuous bullshit. You know the difference between not liking a movie and hatefully harassing a woman so bad she has to get off social media. And you know which of those two we're talking about here. Ryan Johnson quote from Twitter. Actually, Ryan, I don't know what you're talking about here. There's still no proof or confirmation that harassment about Star Wars is the reason Kelly Tran left Instagram. Besides it being a great rhyme, there are hundreds of reasons she could have deleted her account. That's why I find it very funny that you and the rest of the press are assuming this reason. You know, it's kind of funny because this reason you're assuming fits your agenda so well. I've seen Ryan in dozens of articles assume this about Kelly Tran, but I've never seen any proof of her being harassed. I've even heard people make bogus claims about her getting death threats, which too I have yet to see any proof of. The fact of the matter is, we don't know why Kelly Tran left social media, but we do know that this reason, the reason Ryan and other Star Wars shills are going with, is self-serving at best and a lie to change the narrative on other bad Star Wars stories going around at worst. This isn't the first time Johnson has made it clear he doesn't have time for these people. What we talk about when we talk about man babies. Ryan Johnson, Twitter. Some Star Wars fans have been playing the game where they attack the films in a sexist way, only to claim that it's unfair to call them sexist, just because they're focusing their anger on women and using sexist attacks. Yeah, you know what? It is unfair, Polygon. You and Star Wars and Ocean's 8 and Ghostbusters 2016, and now Battlefield 5, you've all set yourself up in this pretty convenient position. These companies basically think they can't be criticized because their projects star women, and then when their products eventually fail, me and other fans are put in this awkward position where we can't say we didn't like them because they will call us sexist. It's a nice, convenient female defense mechanism they set up here, but I think the people are starting to catch on. Star Wars actor John Boyega is also kinda over that bullshit. Quote, "We don't care, John Boyega," from Twitter. Wow, you'd think this up-and-coming actor would have better things to do than to jump in on this bullshit. I heard Boyega was white knighting Kelly Tran too, and I have to say, it's really heartbreaking to see. Finn was a pretty decent enough character in The Force Awakens, but him partnering up with Rose Tico in The Last Jedi really ruined it. But that's more Ryan Johnson's fault if anything. anything, so I can see why that round-headed moron is still freaking out. But Boyega? He's supposed to be cool. Finn is supposed to be our boy, and as Obi-Wan would say, you were supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them. Dan Harmon, co-creator of Rick and Morty, has made his distaste for the same sort of vocally horrible fans. Somehow, the toxic Rick and Morty fans also tend to attack women involved with the show. It's weird how that keeps happening, huh? I've made no bones about the fact that I loathe these people. Harmon told Entertainment Weekly in a story about the show's women being harassed. He loathes his fans. Nice one. It fucking sucks, and the only thing I can say is, if you're lucky enough to make a show that's really good that people like, that means some bad people are gonna like it too. Wow, they're really bringing Dan Harmon into this. The self-proclaimed male feminist who has been divorced and caught sexually harassing women, which unfortunately isn't all that surprising when it comes to male feminists these days. It's the creeps who claim to be champions for women who also end up taking advantage of them and hurting them. So while I love his show Rick and Morty, Dan Harmon is a terrible creep. He's a drunk and a loser who can barely keep his shit together. As for his show's women being supposedly harassed, I think the only person they should be afraid of doing that to them is Dan himself. Harassing women on his staff is what got him into trouble before, a year or so back. And look at what we got here now. Now in Rick and Morty's latest season, Harmon brought on even more women to work with him, more than ever. So either he's doing this to overcompensate for his guilt, or he's fixing to start harassing again. Either way, this is super fucked up. Also, Rick and Morty is just another example of what I was talking about before. This is a guy's show, a guy's product, which the creators are trying to force more women into. And of course, it eventually gets them backlash. And then the show calls that criticism harassment and says it's all the fans' fault for being toxic. This is happening over and over again, and it really does need to stop. It's depressing that angry men of Twitter are still so angry about Star Wars, video games, and Rick and Morty, which have become something of an angry internet man starter kit. But it's heartening to see so many people behind these properties make it clear that the fandom shouldn't tolerate the worst parts of itself. People threatening to walk away from these fandoms while they're being horrible, only to be told that it might be better off if they actually do walk away, is a positive development. Jesus Christ, Polygon, get a fucking grip. You're not on the right side of history on this one, buddy. You're not defending the underdogs either. Battlefield, Star Wars, and Rick and Morty aren't these little sorry, helpless startup companies. They're all owned by big, giant global corporations. So when you're backing a company that is like the equivalent of ExxonMobil or GE, a company with so many billions of dollars it's obscene, you're not fighting the man, Polygon. You're not making a stand for social minorities either. All you're doing is being a goddamn PR stooge and shilling for those companies. In the end, the fans are not the problem here. Sure, there are some terrible toxic fans out there, but the vast majority of the ones being talked about today, they have actual legitimate criticisms about these media products. Unfortunately, the companies are taking the easy way out on this. Instead of hearing the people out, adjusting, and giving the customers what they want, they're doubling down and shitting on their fan base. They really should be using the old business adage, the customer is always right, but instead, they're doing quite the opposite. And frankly, I see it as these companies becoming overconfident and cocky, so much so that they can't even admit they're wrong anymore. And that's why they continually explain away fair criticisms by calling them harassment. What do you guys think? How bad do you think this new trend of companies attacking their fans will get? Do you think the leftists and SJWs will ever learn their lesson? And why do they constantly want to force women into these male spaces? Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. See y'all next time.